I want to discuss the Brooklyn Nets, and they're playing against the Hawks tonight, Wednesday night. I don't know what's going to happen in that game, so let's acknowledge that. The way this pod goes, they'll probably get
here comes the
throttled.
Wendy curse.
Even though the Hawks are banged up right now and just got hammered by the Pacers last night. So on November 25th, the Nets lost to fall to 9-11. Since that time to the recording of this pod, they've played 14 games, of which they have won 13 of them.
That seems pretty good.
I want to go over
like that.
some things that have been happening in this stretch. This is the type of basketball that we envisioned with the Nets when Durant and Kyrie got together, and certainly when they got Harden. And, for a while showed off one of the best offensive attacks that we've seen in the modern time. So they're number one in offense in the last 14 games, which is, not stunning, but I want to go over tell you some numbers. You know that the holy grail for offensive basketball is 50, 40, 90. There's only been a few dozen players.
I see where you're going with this one.
In the NBA history to do it. Well, in this stretch of 14 games, Durant is 61% overall, 45% from three, 95% from the line. And here's how close Kyrie is. Kyrie's 50% from the field. I think 49 and change. I'm giving him a
49.8.
40% from three, and 89% from the line. So essentially they have two 50, 40, 90 performers performing at the same time. Okay.
Wendy, not only that, their team during that stretch, 53 and change from the floor, 42.1 from 3-point range, and 80.4 from the free throw line. So they're 53, 42, 80 as a team. Now, obviously, that's primarily because the two guys you just pointed to, who are averaging 31 points and 27 points per game during that stretch.
Exactly. So let me go over two other things here. Number one, I want to talk about clutch play, because 9 times in this 14-game stretch, they've entered clutch time inside 5 minutes, inside 5 points. They've come out of those with 8 wins, 8-1 going into clutch time. In the clutch, as a team, they are shooting 62% in clutch time, 46% on threes. Durant, 61% field goal percentage in clutch time in this stretch, 75% on threes. I'll say that again, 75% on threes. We're not talking about 2 games. We're talking about over 9 games, okay? Kyrie, clutch time, 55% in this stretch, 33% from the field. Now, I'm going to jump in front of Bontemps here, because for the last 2 years, every time we've ever talked about the Nets, whether they're doing well or poorly, Bontemps points to their defense. And he does that for a good reason, because their defense has been the weight on their ankle.
Steal my thunder, bro.
It's been the urine-soaked wet blanket on their championship hopes.
I was going to praise their defense being better.
All right. So in this stretch, they're number 10 in defense. So top 10 defense. But this is what I want to point out. Nick Claxton, who has his limitations as a defender because of his slight build, in clutch time defense. And look, we're talking about 9 games. We're not talking about 37 games.
We're talking about a 24-minute sample, to be clear.
Okay. Not
Still.
Everything, but not nothing.
It's a whole half.
Okay.
Or half of a whole.
But it's in 9 different games. It wasn't on one night. Okay.
Sure.
His defensive rating is 55. In other words, if it was projected over 100 possessions, the other team would score 55 points. Now, I'll let you go, Bontemps. I just want to point out that this is an incredible stretch of basketball, and this is Durant and Kyrie, the dream level that we've been looking at. There's no way they're going to continue to shoot the ball this way. There's no way they're going to continue to play this ball in the clutch. But we were all over this team for their deficiencies, and so now we have to pay attention to them when it's coming together.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've been on a great stretch, and the biggest criticism, I wouldn't even say criticism, the biggest question you had about this Nets team was they were generally beating teams that aren't very good during this stretch, right? That basically all were games against teams that are currently at or below 500. The exception to that was when they played the Celtics and they lost in fairly handy fashion at home at the beginning of December. But then they play Milwaukee on Friday. I was at that game. They played really well from start to finish, controlled that game, won going away against the Bucks. They go to Cleveland on Monday, another good team, control that game for basically the entire game, win that game going away. And that really puts that question to bed for now. And yeah, I mean, the thing that stood out to me, I mean, look, like I said, I'm not saying the stuff about the 24 minutes to knock the Nets in the clutch. I just think we talk a lot about clutch stats, and it's about such a microscopic sample size that it doesn't matter to me almost whether teams are good or bad in them, because you're talking about such a little. I mean, yes, in the aggregate, if you're winning all these games, yes, it matters. But if you're talking about 24 minutes over a 20 game sample or 15 game sample size, it's just a very small amount to me.
NBA playoff series are played over 7 games. So, I mean,
sure.
I'm not saying I'm ready to give Nick Claxton a max contract. I'm just saying, like, it's over nine different nights that they were in the clutch.
Sure. The bigger thing I would take away from it is the first 20 games of the season. Yeah, there were 9 and 11. The first 20 games of the season, Nets were 20th in defense. The last 14 games, they're 10th in defense. If the Nets are 10th in defense going forward, they're going to be really damn good. Like that's the biggest question. The two questions they have are, can they be a top 10 defensive team? And how long could Kevin Durant go playing heavy minutes and never missing a game? The one game he missed was the game he sat out when they sat their whole team in Indiana, sat their top 8 guys and won the game anyway. It was a really, talk to people around the Nets. That was a really galvanizing win for that team, going to Indiana back-to-back, winning that game. And, they've gone on a huge run since then. And by the way, Jacques Vaughn deserves a lot of credit too. Like, you look at what's happened with this team, he took over as coach, and early on there was a game where Kyrie wasn't, was kind of freelancing on a play. Jacques Vaughn immediately called timeout. It was like, we're not going to do that. We're going to run our stuff. And like, you look at the way this team has turned their season around, he deserves a lot of credit, because this team does not resemble the team they were early on when they were flailing around, getting blown out,
I also think
terrible.
Kyrie is absolutely, without question, purposely on his best behavior.
Sure.
And that really helps.
He's also been available and healthy. Look, set aside the controversy from earlier this year, this goes back to the summer. From the moment that guy opted into his final year of his deal, he has been available and showing up for games and healthy and not missing games for nagging injuries. Like, he clearly sees that he's got to be on the court and produce to get paid. And so he's doing that. And if him and Kevin are on the court healthy and playing, their offense is going to be really good. And if their defense could stay where it's been for the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, they've got every reason to be one of the elite teams in the East, which, certainly not what I think any of us expected to be saying after the way things started out over the first month.
Well, and then if they continue to be one of the elite teams in the East, it's going to be an interesting summer regardless. But if this is the way the Nets play for the rest of the season, they make a deep playoff run. How can you not keep Kyrie?
Wow, that's a whole other debate. The other thing too is the other thing
how can you not keep Kyrie and convince KD that it makes any sense in the world?
Well, and the other thing that, our conversation about the straw poll got aggregated a little bit in the wrong way when we talked about Durant.
You don't say.
Well, yeah. I didn't. What I said at the time was, because of the combination of where the Nets I thought were going to be in the standings, and the fact that narratively I thought Durant was going to have some headwind against them based off what's going on with the Nets, I didn't think he had much of a chance of winning. Now, if the Nets finish with the best record in the Eastern Conference and Kevin is healthy the rest of the year playing like this, he's going to be right in the mix on the MVP race, just like these other guys are. So,
by the way, some of the gambling sites, I'm looking at Bet Online sent us out some odds. KD is now number 5 in the odds at plus 1,000, right above Embiid. I haven't compared their stats side by side. Perhaps somebody could do that for us on social media. But Luka is once again the favorite after last night. Obviously, this is a reaction to last night. In order, Luka, Tatum, Jokic, who is absolutely incredible.
It was also
Giannis,
first after
KD,
Sunday
and Embiid.
too, and Jokic
Yeah.
was first after Sunday. I mean, this is the way it's going to be for a while. But
It is.
my point is, like Durant, if the Nets are going to keep doing this, and they're going to be top 2 or 3 seed in the East, which they're I think a game out now of first, like he's going to be right in the mix for that too. I certainly did not think that the Nets are going to be able to turn things around like this, but those 2 games against Milwaukee and Cleveland were really impressive, and that was like I said, the one lingering question for me was what were they going to do against higher level competition. And those were 2 of the more impressive wins, in the last couple of weeks around the league. Yeah. So I'm impressed with what they've been able to do. It's a hell of a turnaround.
The Nets are playing as well as anybody in the league right now. And it's really remarkable how they've been able to overcome the presence of Nick Friedel and go on this kind of a run.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.